About a month ago, I made a video about the toughest runs to a World Series, and the main stats I used were opponent win totals and opponent wins above average. And with this, I figured that the 2019 Nationals had the toughest run to a World Series. But at the end, with those stats, I figured that the team with the toughest possible road to a World Series in the NL by opponent win total belonged to the Diamondbacks, and in the AL, it belonged to the Rangers. And wouldn't you know it, these two teams somehow both made it to the World Series. Of course, the problem here is that neither of them went on that exact route to make it the hardest World Series run of all time. The Braves lost to the Phillies, and when you get the 5 and 6 seed in the World Series, it obviously takes some away from the stats and eye test. But that's not to say the Diamondbacks and Rangers both went on 2 incredible runs. Just in their runs to the World Series, the Rangers' opponent win totals beat the Diamondbacks by 8, and their opponent wins above average beats the Diamondbacks by a wide margin at 15. Dating back to the start of the wildcard era in 2012, just those 3 opponent win totals will put the Rangers' opponents at 5th since 2012. And when we add in the Diamondbacks, it goes up to 2nd, with their opponent win total at 374, behind the 2019 Nationals' 393 opponent wins. And in terms of opponent wins above average for the ALCS, that equals 42.1. But the Diamondbacks don't do much to this total, as their wins above average is just 1, just ahead of the 5th seed Marlins. Outside of the Braves, by this standard, the NL may have been a little weaker considering that there are 4 teams who didn't make the playoffs ahead of the Marlins and Diamondbacks. But that doesn't matter, as the Rangers' opponent's wins above average total is still the 4th highest since 2012. And when we add these 2 stats together, it's the 2nd highest total since 2012, behind once again the 2019 Nationals. And the main reason the 2023 Rangers, 2019 Nationals, and 2014 Giants rank in the top 3 is because they are the only 3 teams to win the World Series after starting in the wildcard round. The only difference between the Rangers and the other 2 is the Rangers had to win 2 games instead of 1, and you can argue that winning the 1 wildcard game is more of a challenge than a 3-game series. And in the Rangers' case, they had the luxury of playing in an empty stadium. But regardless of the numbers and whatnot, the eye test is perhaps more important in determining the toughest World Series run. Both the Diamondbacks and Rangers faced tough challenges on their way to the World Series, and they both started out in dominant fashion, sweeping the first 2 rounds, with both winning 4 road games. Then they both went down 3-2 in the LCS, and won 2 straight road games in tough atmospheres to give us one of the weirdest World Series matchups of all time. But which of these 2 runs to the World Series was harder? Well, the numbers clearly say it was the Rangers, but the Diamondbacks run is one you have to look at past the numbers. The Brewers were probably the worst division winners, but in their 2 victories, the Diamondbacks came back from 3-run and 2-run deficits against Corbin Burnes and Freddie Peralta. Then, like the Rangers later did, they had a chance to beat a division rival, but unlike Rangers Astros, this series was an absolute blowout. Then they went to Philly and went down 2-0, and this series seemed absolutely over. But then, they once again had 2 late comeback wins, then once again, they were down in the series. And it seemed unfathomable that they could beat Philly 2 times on the road. And they did, which is why for an 84-win team, they may have had the most improbable run to a pennant since the 2014 Royals. And just like the 2014 Royals, they wound up losing to another wildcard team. And the most impressive thing that wildcard team did was going an insane 11-0 on the road to their first World Series. That 11-game road win streak will go down as one of the greatest win streaks in baseball history. And in playoff history, it is the greatest. The most road wins in one postseason prior to this year is 8, by the 1996 Yankees and 2019 Nationals. And in comparing to other World Series runs, these Rangers are similar to the 2019 Nationals, which I consider to be the toughest run to a World Series. They both started out in the wild card and beat a 100-plus win team in the LDS. And what's wild here is that they are the only teams to be involved in a 7-game series where every team won on the road, and both were against the Astros, which is pretty absurd. But what these 2 teams most have in common is that they were resilient. They were both down 3-2 against the Astros and came back on the road, and both times, Max Scherzer pitched in the Game 7. So as of right now, amongst the 3 teams who won the World Series after starting in the wild card, I still have to put the 2019 Nationals in front, mainly because of how great the 2019 Astros and Dodgers were. Facing the Diamondbacks did hurt the Rangers' case a little, and if the Rangers faced the Phillies and won, the opponent wins above average plus win total would still be below the 2019 Nationals. But the Phillies couldn't beat the Diamondbacks, and neither could the Brewers or the Dodgers, but the Rangers could, which is why there's no way you can discredit their first run to a title. And one more thing I want to touch on is the importance of Cory Seager and Adolis Garcia. I didn't touch on Seager in my most recent video about modern Mr. Octobers, but he's absolutely right there. And it's seen in the fact that his stats are very similar at this point to Reggie Jackson, and he joined Jackson as the only other position player to win World Series MVP twice. Dating back to 2020 when the Dodgers played 16 playoff games at Globe Life Field, and 6 more this year, in these 22 games, he's hit 10 home runs and drove in 23, with a .313 batting average and a .1209 OPS, and he's added 23.11% in championship win probability. So playoff Globe Life Cory is right there with steroids Barry Bonds and Nick Castellanos in the midst of an apology.
I pride myself and think of myself as a man of...
And that game-tying 2-run home run in the 9th he had in Game 1 added 14.79% to the Rangers' championship win probability, the 3rd highest play in history for a Game 1, and the 9th highest for a Game 1 occurred 2 innings later, and was hit by ALCS MVP Adolis Garcia, who without a doubt had one of the greatest postseason performances of all time. The Rangers were able to put the ghost of David Freese behind them, and Adolis Garcia was able to put the single postseason RBI record set by Freese behind him. Garcia set the record of 22 RBIs with his walk-off home run, and in just ALCS Game 7 and World Series Game 1, he added 30% to the Rangers' championship win probability. And throughout the entire postseason, he added 35.4%, and I'm sure he would have cracked the top 10 if he was able to play Games 4 and 5. As the probability goes up, the closer you get to the title. But while it was very unfortunate that he was unable to play those final 2 games, with Garcia being able to silence a rival stadium that was booing him and provide massive moments for his team, him and Seager combined to become the Rangers' version of David Freese. So after enduring so much pain in their history, the 2023 Rangers were able to put all that aside and go on one of the greatest World Series runs of all time, and took themselves and their fan base higher.